if you like Psych with Mike, here's a couple of ways that you could really help us out. You could subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at Psych with Mike. But the two things that would really, really help us out is subscribing to us on YouTube, search Psych with Mike, but also going to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a review and a comment. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Did you have anything more to say about that?
No.
Okay.
No, it's sufficiently finished.
Okay. Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and sitting across from me is Mr. Brett Newcomb.
It's good to be back.
You know, we were doing some fillers, the commercial fillers, before we started, and we were talking about your recent escapades as a narrator. And I didn't know, did you want to plug that?
Well, it's not technically available yet. It's still in the editing process.
I know, but this isn't going to come out for a week or so.
I don't have any control over the timelines for anything in my life. Yeah. No, I was given the opportunity to record a book that I co-wrote with Dr. Kathy Maupin at BioBalance Health, and it's a book that I enjoy writing and feels helpful, and it's going to come out as an audiobook on audiobooks and on Amazon sometime this summer, and I'm real excited about it.
Yeah. So the name?
Got Testosterone.
And this is horrible, horrible radio, but good if you're watching us on the YouTubes. Actually, it's up here on the shelf.
There it is, yeah. Looking at it right there.
Yeah. And so how did that come about?
It's actually next to your book and then my other book, The Secret Female Home.
Yes, you have two books and I have one book. Yes, that's true.
Let's don't be jealous.
So how did the audio thing come about?
The publisher recommended that we get it done because she thought it would be another way to reach the market that we want to reach. And then we started looking into, hiring somebody to read it and some company to produce it and so on. And we found a company here in St. Louis to work with who were phenomenal. And they said my voice was adequate.
Oh, they shouldn't have said that. That's not...
That wasn't actually what they said. More than adequate is what they said, but I edited that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, because I think that both of us are convinced that our tones are mellifluous and dulcet, and that we're both good speakers that people like to listen to. So flattery in that area could be dangerous for either one of us. Yeah.
That's because we listen to ourselves all the time.
Well, that's true, because nobody else will.
And then after I give myself a talking to, I say, damn, that was good. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I am actually extremely excited, even though I have a copy of the book and have read the book. I think I will probably buy a copy of the audiobook.
Awesome.
I love listening to audiobooks.
Yeah.
Do you listen?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
I didn't know when I first got into it. I didn't know, because I love a book in my hands, and I know that you do too.
Yes.
And so when I resisted listening to audiobooks for a long time, but then I started buying audiobooks like The Wheel of Time is a fantasy series that I read. It's super, super long, and rather than try and go through and reread it, I started buying the books on audio and listening to them, like when I was working around the house or doing yard work and stuff, and I've just fallen in love with it.
The first audiobook I remember listening to, I listened to probably 15 years ago. Donald Sutherland read it, and it was a murder mystery, and it was really scary. And my wife and I go camping a lot, and when we sit around the campfire at nights after we've exhausted the conversation, we turn on the book, and it's like being a kid in Scouts listening to ghost stories around the campfire.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one critical point in the story where something exciting was happening, and they reached the end of the section. And back then, the audiobooks were on tapes or CDs.
Yeah.
And so Donald Sutherland says, "Quick, turn the CD," because we had to take it out and turn around and get side B to continue the story. But they broke it just at gunshots were going off, So it was really exciting.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that the other side of the CD was like scratched and you couldn't listen to it.
No. Just struck me that we were so absorbed in the story, and then the narrator comes in and says, "Hey, turn the thing over."
We have done that going to Colorado, especially Jack Reacher books, which you are a huge fan of.
Right.
And I don't think our friend Paul is as into it.
No, he's not.
As we are, because I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And Paul will tolerate it for a period of time.
Very gracious, very generous with his tolerance.
Yeah.
Until he's not.
Until he's not. That's right. Yeah. I remember when I was young, we would go to school all year, and I thought school just was all year long. And it turns out...
Is that because you had to go to summer school all the time?
Yeah. My mom would send us to summer school so that...
That explains so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't question it. I just assumed you just went to school all year.
You said, "Mom, why do you always put me on the short bus?"
In the summertime, we didn't have buses. We walked to school.
Well, there you go.
And we didn't have air conditioning. And so the school was really small. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was really small.
I'm old enough that I grew up and went to school through my entire life in schools that didn't have air conditioning.
And so a lot of summer school was us sitting on the floor in the dark with big fans blowing, and one of the teachers reading either the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew mysteries to us. And that was my favorite part of school. It's still one of my fondest memories. Huh. And then once I started listening to audiobooks, I kind of felt that again. And so even though I was initially reluctant, I have just become a huge fan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think any way you can access the content of a book is worthwhile.
And I think that actually you should never underestimate the value of reading a book and then listening to it, because multimodal learning actually allows you to retain the information much more comprehensively.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how many hours do you sleep a night?
Now I'd say I average 6 or 7, but through most of my life I probably averaged 4.
4?
Yeah.
Wow. And for a part of my life, actually about a 7-year stretch, I worked nights at the hospital.
I worked nights so many years. Yeah.
And I didn't realize when my second child was born, my family has said, "Don't talk about us on the radio." Okay.
I don't blame them.
Yeah. I'm like, nobody cares who you are. But anyway, so when my second child was born, my wife came to me and said, "You have to get a day job because we can't manage our lives with you working nights." And I really resisted it because I enjoyed working nights. I liked the fact that there were fewer people there to hold you to task. The job, while it was difficult because you had to stay awake all night, was generally easier because the patients were asleep most of the time.
Right.
And so I grudgingly acquiesced and gave in, got a day job. When I stopped working nights, I could not believe how much better I felt. I did not know how damaging it was until I stopped doing it.
There's a lot of discussion in the professional literature about circadian rhythms.
Yeah.
And that most of us have body clocks that are attuned to daytime, but some of us appear to have body clocks that are attuned to nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
My memory of the years when I worked a full-time day job and a full-time night job was that I felt like I was living 2 lives, that other people were spending half of their life asleep, and I was awake and aware, and I could watch TV or drive a car or read a book or whatever I was doing in a time when other people were either asleep or at their jobs. So I felt like I had two complete independent sets. But when it didn't involve work any longer, it still was something that I did a lot. I'd stay up all night. There are many, many nights in my lifetime I've started a book after dinner, and I've finished it and looked up and it was daylight and time to get dressed and go to work, and not get any sleep at all that night. But I remember telling myself at the time, this is just super cool. I'm just really lucky, and this is something that I reap the benefits of that other people are missing out on. And I would tell people, like, stay up and read a book, you know. They'd look at me like, you're an idiot. So then we had someone contact the program and say, have you heard this term? Do you know this? I'm interested in what you think about it. And the term is, let me find it here on my notes because I've forgotten already. That's what happens when you stay up all the time. What is the psychology behind bedtime procrastination?
Well, even more, revenge.
Yes.
Bedtime procrastination.
And so when I first heard the term, which is not one I was familiar with. I'm certainly familiar with procrastination and many of its various manifestations. But I thought, well, it's kind of like when the liberals talk about defunding the police, whatever their message is and their agenda is for dealing with police budgets. That's a stupid terminology. I mean, it's counterproductive. It actually cost them the willingness of some people to listen because it's offensive and it turns them off. And I think revenge procrastination hit me that way initially. So after I read the article that you sent me and did some contemplation when I was awake, I decided it is probably a technically accurate term, but I think it needs some clarification or understanding it certainly did for me. I had to work my way through, why would they use that word? Why are they using that word? What's the revenge about? Your revenge against your boss or your wife or your friends.
Or yourself.
Well, I think that's what it's about. I think it's revenge against self because you're angry or frustrated about something in your life, and you are, in the article that I read, was talking about how when you feel structured and trapped by your routines, then you steal time from sleep, which is sometimes the only place where you have any control over your time, and you indulge yourself. You indulge yourself in playing video games, watching movies, watching sports from around the world because they're available 24/7 now, or doing some other hobby-based activity, and instead of sleeping. And so they were talking about people who reduce their sleep and expand their time doing these things when they're off duty. And sometimes it allows them to be alone time, downtime.
And I'm assuming that the individual who sent this in is named Ida, just from the email address, but that could be completely wrong. But
I don't know.
But because this individual did not identify themselves, so if you are this individual,
you're out there, and you're awake,
then contact us and let us know who you are, because we would love to know. But I got this email and I read it, and like you, I was not familiar with the term and immediately assumed that it was some kind of sexual thing that had to do with couples and, the kind of dance that couples do around sex. And then when I started doing the research and I found out what it was, I was like, holy cow, every adolescent that I have in my practice does this. And
well, let's go back to the first point. Couples regularly report that bedtiming is one of the things they fight about in their sex life. And there are a lot of justifications for it. Sometimes it's, I don't want to be sexual with you, but I'm not prepared to say it because it'll lead to a fight. And if I can just say, well, I'm going to watch the rest of the ball game and then I'll come to bed, and by the time the ball game's over and I come to bed, you're asleep. Or if I say, the mattress is just not really comfortable, I think I'm going to sleep on the couch, but it's not about sex. It's about, I just need to be comfortable because I got to go to work tomorrow. I remember in my first marriage, my wife would regularly start conversations in the middle of the night about things of concern to her. And it seemed like it would be deliberately midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, because she didn't have to get up in the morning and go to work, but I did. And I'd be watching the clock with one eye and listening to her presentation of whatever her concern was with one ear, thinking to myself, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I mean, totally non-functional way to communicate with her and try to resolve those issues, but I remember that being a pattern.
And there are times in a couple where this resistance to going to bed together or sleeping in the same room is some kind of passive aggressive.
Too much. I sleep in the other room. Yeah.
But in my experience, the overwhelming way in which this is manifest is just some kind of lack of communication.
When one of us says, in my experience, we're talking about our personal experience as well as the experience of 30 years of counseling, listening to other people tell us their stories.
Right.
So,
most of the time, if I've got a couple in therapy and I say, "Hey, are you guys willing to have sex with each other?" They're both like, "Yeah," but nobody talks about it.
Right.
And so the guy is watching the ball game, thinking, "Well, she's not interested," and the woman goes to bed thinking, "Well, he's not interested because he's watching the ball game." No, he's having a conversation about it.
Right.
If you are dissatisfied, if you're a couple in a relationship and you're dissatisfied with the amount of sex you're having, I would strongly encourage you to have a conversation about the amount of sex that you're having and see what happens, because you might be surprised how receptive your partner is to the idea of having sex, but people don't have those conversations. So I originally had thought...
They're dangerous.
Yeah.
What if I say, I really want to have sex with you, and you say, I don't?
Right.
Then where's that lead me?
Well, right.
Yeah. So I avoid it. We hint, we signal. There's all kinds of nonverbal anticipatory behavior that couples develop a dance for intimacy and signaling, cueing, and when the troubles come, they forget how to dance.
Yeah.
They misinterpret the dance, or they dance alone.
So let's take our break, and we'll pick this up again on the other side.
And we won't talk about sex then.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Brett, I heard you have a great face for audiobooks.
I had an opportunity to read a book that's out, or will be out soon, on audiobooks. But it was a book that I had written, or co-written, with Dr. Kathy Maupin. And it was a good time. We had a great time in it. I think it's going to be good.
And the name of the book?
Got Testosterone.
And available where?
On Amazon and audiobooks when it comes out. Not yet, but soon, in the summer.
I'm very envious.
Well, that's called audiobook envy.
If it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back, and we're not going to talk about sex. Unless Brett brings it up.
Okay, I'm bored.
But so I thought that this was all about that, and it turns out that it isn't. And like I said, when I started doing research on it, I recognized how many of my adolescent clients talk about this, but then I also started to recognize how many of my adult clients live exactly this way, where people are so stressed out and they feel like there isn't enough time in the day, but they're taking a device to bed with them and they're watching Netflix, or they're, worse, just have YouTube on, playing on its endless loop. And they're not really paying attention. They're not looking at anything that interests them. They're just looking at whatever YouTube throws at them next. And they'll spend 4 or 5 hours doing this, and then they'll talk about, "Oh, I'm so tired."
Yeah, they go down the loop.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder if this is a substantial manifestation of anger towards the self, like, I'm not getting enough done. I don't feel productive enough. So the way that I am, you remember wearing a hair shirt?
Yeah.
And so for people who aren't Catholic, back in the day, you used to have to pay a penance for your sins. The priest would tell you, okay, do 15 Hail Marys or wear a hair shirt for 2 days. So a hair shirt was a woolen shirt that you would wear underneath your clothing that was real scratchy and uncomfortable, and you would wear that as a penance for your sins. And so when people say wearing a hair shirt, that refers back to those medieval days when people used to do things like that. We hopefully don't do that as much today, although you can still buy a hair shirt if you are interested. But I wonder if this is the modern manifestation of that, where people are paying penance for their perceived lack of productivity. They're taking it out on themselves by reducing the amount of hours that they sleep, which is then having a real negative impact on their physiology.
And I remember, because I used to teach medieval history, religious history.
Yes, I know you did.
I remember that hair shirts were very frequently worn among the monks and brothers, the priesthood, as a way to reduce sexual arousal by pain and discomfort, so that it didn't...
I believe the Knights Templar wore them also.
In order to reduce, because they had committed themselves to celibacy. But your body is human, and it has reactions when you see things or people, or you just have desires, a hormonal flux that goes through you, and suddenly you're aroused, and hair shirts help reduce your participation in that. It's the same way that Opus Dei Some of the members of Opus Dei whip themselves and flagellate themselves, even today, to reduce the bodily temptations that they deny and resist. So doing things like revenge, procrastination for going to bed could be a modernized form of that. It's less immediately painful, but it can cause painful outcomes in terms of your efficiency and functionality at work and in your relationships. It isolates you. It makes you be more alone. And it mesmerizes you. I mean, if you're talking about watching mindless TikTok, YouTube, whatever, as a way to escape sleep or as a way to escape contact with others.
And I know that you hate the science, but I'm just going to talk about a little bit of science.
You can't say that to me. I'm a Democrat.
Okay. So I know that you are bored by the science.
Sometimes you get so far down in the weeds, I lose my interest.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it isn't that you hate it; you become bored with it.
Because I hate watching you build a clock. Just tell me what time it is.
And you question whether or not that's helpful. I am convinced that there are some
it's
people
helpful to you and for some people.
And I think
but I'm not one.
You're not.
So when I say what time is it, just tell me what time it is.
But the current beliefs
Sorry,
about
did I distract you?
dementia and no, not at all. And things like Alzheimer's disease are that those are chronic sleep disorders. So the physiological processes that happen, and I'm not going to go into the whole glial cell cerebral spinal fluid, but the truth is that, or the point is that there are benefits from sleeping that your brain can't get any other way.
Right, because your brain chemistry has to drain out the garbage at the end of the day, the refuse from cell expenditure of energy.
Yeah.
And that can only happen when you're asleep because those channels don't open while you're awake.
And if you don't sleep adequately,
you don't get all the garbage out of your head.
And so that's not going to affect you the next day. And like you spent years being proud of the fact that you could only sleep for 4 hours and work efficiently.
Yeah.
And that's true. You could. But if you had manifested
and regularly not go to sleep at all
through the rest of your life, as you got older, there would have been real debilitating psychological
Well, my
effects.
wife tells me that's happened already.
Well,
and she says,
there may be some of it.
What does she know?
Well, she's a pretty smart woman.
Yeah, that's what she tells me.
And, I myself struggle with this, thinking about how much damage that I did to myself during the years that I was abusing drugs, and what would I be if I hadn't done that. But the truth is, we can't go back in time and change those things, but we don't have to keep making the same mistake over and over again. And so when somebody says to you, hey, the way you sleep may have long-term physiological detrimental effects on you, you then have the ability to change that. If you don't, then that's fine. Don't get a coronavirus vaccination. That's okay. But then you're making a choice, and if there's a consequence to be paid for that, then you have to be honest with yourself.
So right now I can hear you make that argument and say, oh my God, that's an epiphany. And if I don't do anything about it and I'll wait a few more years and you make that argument, I'll be reduced to going, huh?
Well, yeah, like if you wait long enough, it won't matter. That's right. Go. You won't care.
Yeah.
Right. But so, if you're in your 70s and you've never had good sleep, I feel really badly. I still think that it would be in your best interest to try and find ways of being able to sleep, because there are some things that actually physiologically could get in the way, like sleep apnea.
Yeah.
If you stop breathing in the middle of the night, then you wake yourself up. You might not even be aware of that. So if you have bad sleep...
Before I lost enough weight, I used to suffer from that, and I snored horribly and had sleep apnea. And I didn't lose any sleep about it at all, but I kept my wife awake at nights because she thought I was dying. And she'd like punch me and say, breathe. And she was very frustrated by that. But then she wouldn't feed me for months at a time, and I lost enough weight, and now that's not an issue. But those are real, legitimate concerns.
You couldn't put a pot pie in the microwave for yourself?
No.
No?
Oh, God, no. There's a reason why no one's ever eaten my cooking.
Oh, okay. Actually, that's not true. I think I have eaten your cooking. You make soup, and you do a good job of it.
I have hidden talents.
Yeah. But if there is... If you recognize that you're not sleeping well, and you don't think it's because you take a device to bed with you and spend all night looking at the device rather than sleeping. And one of the things that I think we have to make people aware of is that devices can negatively influence your sleep, even if you think you're asleep, right? So the blue light,
because of the blue light that comes on,
yeah.
like if you get a message or something. And I know we came back out of break soon. We were going to talk about sex, but the current
I knew you'd find a way.
Literature is suggesting that the fertility rates are declining in America, and fewer babies are being born. And one of the reasons why is that couples are having less sex. And one of the reasons that is attributed to is they're spending time on their personal electronic devices. They're watching their iPad or their cell phone, even watching pornography while they masturbate, laying next to their partner who would have sex with them, but they're not. And so those are complications that exist around the discussion of this topic.
And so if we're going to talk to somebody about trying to have better sleep, then one of the first things that I'm going to do is to encourage people not to take devices to bed. Don't have a TV on in your bedroom at night when you go to bed. Don't have your phone that you're actually, I mean, if you use your phone, now a lot of us use our phones as alarm clocks, and that's fine, but don't be watching YouTube and Netflix on your phone. Don't have a tablet there. Now, there's controversy over if I take an e-reader to bed, and a lot of e-readers have a nighttime function where the light is orange instead of blue. That may be better, but still, it's not as good as having a physical book in your hand.
I remember specifically talking to any number of men in particular who were recently single, either through the death of a partner or the divorce from a partner. And I would encourage them as part of their adaptation to a partnerless life, not to have a television in the bedroom, not to eat in bed, not to have a cell phone or iPad in the bedroom. Make themselves get up out of bed. If you're waking in the middle of the night and you can't sleep and you want to watch TV, get up, go in the other room and watch TV. Teach your body that bedroom is for sleep or pleasure, and that you need to keep it dark and you need to go in and go to sleep. And you have to rebuild your life. But if you don't do that, then you get into this habit of just turning on the TV and leaving it on all night for conversation, for noise, for background light. I think those things are almost always lead to negative outcomes.
And even though we are really intelligent animals, we're animals. And so we are susceptible to the process of both operant and classical conditioning.
I love when you talk like that.
If you condition yourself to do a thing, then you will come to the point where you don't think you can do that thing without it, right? So if you have the TV on all the time,
it's an addiction.
And you say, hey, I can't sleep without the TV, well, you're going to be right, because you're going to condition yourself to that process. But guess what? You can condition yourself to the opposite. If you think you need the TV on, yes, you have been conditioned to believe that the TV is necessary for you to sleep. When you stop using the TV as a babysitter, are you going to find it difficult? Absolutely. That will be a change in your environment. You will have to re-accommodate to that. But eventually, you can condition yourself to sleep without the TV on.
Yes. And always remember, man is not a rational animal. Man is a rationalizing animal.
And so, in addition to not having the TV on, one of the things that is really beneficial is a nighttime ritual. So you're saying, keep the room dark. You will have the expectation that when you go into the room, that's for sleep or for pleasure. And both of those things are positively rewarding. So you will come to expect that. That's a part of the conditioning process. But you can also do things like drink, nighttime sleepy tea. They make all kinds of blends that don't have caffeine that, are good for resting. People still do drink warm milk. Now, milk isn't as popular as it once was, and that's fine. But taking a warm bath can be something that is really relaxing. Practicing, and this is something that when you and I do therapy, we will always say to people, learn how to breathe. And practicing your meditative deep breathing exercises at night before you go to sleep can be incredibly beneficial, for being able to go to sleep and sleep well. But the most important thing is, if you're going to sleep 8 hours, you have to give yourself 8 hours. That means you have to go to bed at a time where you have 8 hours before you have to get up. And you can't use your nighttime as a time machine. Well, I didn't get my stuff done during the day, so I'll stay up an extra 2 hours and get stuff done. Guess what? Even if you do that, you're probably not doing good work.
Right.
And when you get up the next day, you're definitely not as refreshed as you would have been had you slept an actual 8 hours.
Amen.
Yeah. So hopefully that is informational for people. And
So don't stay up to listen to this.
No, do stay up to listen to this. Don't listen to him. No, listen to this and go straight to bed.
Yes. Oh,
So
that's punishment. Yeah. Brush your teeth.
hopefully that is helpful for people. And, we love hearing from you guys. So if you have any comments or suggestions for a show topic, please send those to us, psychwithmike.com. And as always, the music that is in Psych with Mike is composed and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.